Hi, my name is Mark Bell. This is January the 8th, 2007. This is part 2 of our More Than Conqueror series. Part 1 was dealing with some concepts about being a conqueror, what it meant, how it related to the keys of the kingdom given, how a conqueror necessarily implies that there is an adversary, but being more than a conqueror pretty much escapes the reality that you're even in the fight. I made the statement that being more than a conqueror is like being a ruler, because you dictate from your place of authority what the end shall be. Therefore, you bypass being conquered or playing the role of conqueror when you are a more than conqueror. And so I did make the statement that it's like being a ruler. And I said that it was not being a ruler. Because when you truly understand the notion of more than a conqueror, it's a statement given on behalf of the spirit realm for the earthly realm. In other words, there's no need for these concepts in the godly realm because everything's already complete and it's hunky-dory. But we here on earth still feel that there's something to be conquered, and we act and live as though this is the case. It's part of our natural daily lives, and we will do this until we all come into the same unity and oneness of the body. But I say the important thing is that I made a statement last time, to be more than a conqueror in your confession. We need to be more than a conqueror in our confession. And this is the gift that the spirit realm offers to us. That if we could see things from their point of view, then they would really not understand what in the heck we are dealing with. Because we're dealing with concepts of imperfection. Even though we were told to be ye perfect. And so they don't understand what we're dealing with, because they are more than conquerors up there. What I mean by that is that even one named Jesus had to come down among us to see what it would be like to be tempted with the things that we say we're tempted with. Because in the more than conqueror realm, those things don't even exist. Now, as I gotta say this, because we here on the planet Earth have become so haughty, if you will. We think it's about us. We are one planet in the midst of who knows. I would say trillions, billions, unknown. I could say one. I could say none. All of this to me is a concept. And so today's focus on being more than a conqueror is going to be looking at being more than a conqueror in your confession from the point of view of the godly realm. And this is something that I think is worth noting, that in the godly realm, there was already a provision made for earth prior to earth existing. You believe you exist on the planet Earth, a physical planet, where mankind is engaged in the topics and the notions of sin. Therefore, from a more than conqueror perspective, knowing what you might do, or having been reported by possibly someone who came down, that's another discussion, who actually came down. Did someone come down? Well, let's just say that they have the foreknowledge to know what could possibly take place down here. There was already a plan and a provision made from a more than conqueror perspective. And we have confessed them, the Creator, as being perfect, without sin, not tempted by sin. Therefore, even our own confessions have isolated the creator realm from being a part of our realm to a certain extent. Hence, it was necessary for provision to be made for an advocate to bridge the realms. We all know the story about our advocate in Jesus. But let's focus on this. More than a conqueror from the godly realm. Knowing what we might be involved with from an advocate. It's like a lawyer knowing what, some of the needs would be in the prison if we were sent to the prison. We need to have certain services and accommodations for them to prevent violation of their liberty and their state of being. So it was provided that it's like a constitution. We the people do ordain that, that whole type of mindset. They had established that there would be the notion of God separated from God. We know that there is one spirit. And we know that before you were formed in your mother's womb, you were known. We know that Jeremiah was known before he existed materially. He was known and was ordained. Even Jesus, it is written of him that he did not commit himself to men. He said he did not commit himself to them, for he knew all men. He knew in advance what a man would do. Therefore, he did not commit himself to a man. Now, to be an advocate from the godly realm, you must make provisions that would accommodate man confessing that they actually fell from the godly realm in the first place. Because if you're more than a conqueror, it was never created that you would fall from your original position. So for someone to say that you fell from your original position, that's a lie. But it's been accommodated because you would have believed it. Now, because there is one spirit and one body, we know this in Ephesians, there's one body, one spirit. Do not grieve the Holy Spirit by which you are sealed to the day of redemption, but endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit. We talk about the body. From the mind of God, it was created before the foundations of the world that you would be allowed to separate conceptually from the Spirit of God. I had to pause and let you think about it. I'm thinking about it. It's still deep, and I'm teaching about it. It's still deep to me. Wow. It had to be accommodated for you to conceptually divest yourself from the Spirit of God. If you read in the book of Revelation, it talks about the 7 spirits of God. To me, that is really symbolic of the 7 days, which to me are even further symbolic of not a literal 7 days, but 7 events. Those 7 events being called days, and on any of those given days, certain particulars took place. And when the ending of that event that was to be accomplished on that day was completed or ended, then it was declared that this beginning and this end shall be called the first day, blah, 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 the second day, blah, 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 the 7th day. We know that light, the stars, and were not made until, I believe it was the 3rd day. You can actually go back and check this. I'm not really teaching this series now. You can go back and check and see which day it actually was. but I believe it's the third day where the sun and the lights to rule the earth and the day and the night were made. And these were made prior to the earth being formed. So there was already an indication that whatever we use to govern ourselves, to give us days, nights, and seasons, the sun and the moon are the lesser lights to rule the day and the night. Those were made for man to give us days, times, and seasons. This was a more than conqueror mindset to advocate for the concept of time. Now, if on the third day or the second day, whichever it was, that the sun and the moons and the stars were made to accommodate man, these concepts themselves were created for our sake to give us times and seasons. In other words, what it was saying is that even before you try to confess things that will put something in a chronological time as existing or being bound or loosed in heaven, I will circumvent all of that by beforehand setting up a standard that predates even time. And that was shown in the first day. The waters and the darkness were existing, and then the waters were separated. A firmament was placed. The waters above the firmament would be called the heavens. The waters below the firmament were made into the dry land called the earth, and that the firmament in between would separate the boundary. You have the waters above the firmament. Let me correct myself. The waters above the firmament. And then you have the firmament, which was heaven. And then you have the waters beneath the firmament. The waters beneath the firmament were brought together into dry land and called earth. One more time. There were waters. Then the waters were separated. A firmament was placed in there. The firmament was called heaven. Then there was waters above the firmament and then waters below the firmament. Now, the waters below the firmament were gathered together into lands, which we call the earth. Okay? Now, everything that exists was water and darkness, at least from the time this was written in this book. Now, then there was the creation of that which was called light. And this light that was created on that first day, I believe, or that second, the first day, was predating, not in time, but in events. We have events that take order of relevance. And the creation of light would have a higher precedence than the creation of man upon the earth. You will notice that even the beasts of the field were made before man was. Man wasn't made until the sixth day. We know that God rested on the seventh day. And we know that somewhere on the sixth day, the day of man, obviously, many events take place, most of which your Bible is referring to in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Many of those things are occurring in the day of man. You believe you're a man. So many of these days occur in the sixth day. It's an event. It's not a literal sixth day. But all the revelations of the ending of man happen on the sixth day. And after that sixth day thing is wrapped up, we enter into the more than conqueror realm with God, which is on the seventh day. What events happen on the seventh day? It's unwritten. Like Natasha Bedingfield's song, it's unwritten. You are to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And what you loose shall be stored up for you. And it's already been completed, really, what you've stored up. You're here still perfecting some of the things of how you're going to escape and the quality of what you have stored up. There's many things you've stored up, but you can't access all of them until you have perfected what you have confessed here. For example, you believe that in heaven there is no sickness, yet you're still here asking God to heal you from certain things. Well, for your sake, you're being accommodated to hopefully change your confession, because those things really do exist where you've spoken them and where they have been stored up. But you've got to change. You've got to be, as the Bible says, renewed in your mind. Be ye renewed in the way you think, in what you confess. So, being more than a conqueror from a godly realm means knowing how to establish for yourself in the spirit realm protections from ever having to deal with certain things in your natural realms. And this was the mind of God when He spoke concerning the creation of man. The creatures, creeping and crawling things, the beasts of the field, the gardens, were all made before man was made. They were made on the 5th day. The birds, the fowls, the earth, the 5th day, baby. And man comes behind on the 6th day. Why? Man needed a plan. He couldn't see the plan of God because he would confess it wrong. Therefore, he had to see something that came before him to see how it functioned, to instruct, guide Adam and the descendants of Adam on what they would need to protect themselves from and confess as standards. Really, to know, watching these, taking care of these beasts and these animals, to observe what they do, to tap into the mind of the advocate, to let them know what was standards lifted up already in heaven that needed to be loosed on earth, such that if we dare confess the wrong thing and believe the wrong thing, that we could have seen these animals and so forth and know that, yeah, when I saw them, I spoke what I needed to protect myself. And it was already done. For example, you believe that you are a piece of flesh, but originally you were spoken to be the image of God. Now, I'm going to continue this series in the next viewing, because I want you to reflect on being more than a conqueror from the godly mindset. In review, I have stated that God accommodated being separated from Himself, even though He's one with Himself. He allowed Himself to have a plan and an advocate before the foundations. And so that's why when you look in Revelation, you find that the throne is not the throne of Jesus. It's not the throne of the Lord. It's not the throne of Christ. It is called in Revelation the throne of God and of the Lamb. Why? Everything that you as a man espouse to as being right, wrong, good, evil, and moral happens in the 6th day, which is not where God is resting. He's resting on the 7th day. Therefore, all the things you confess in this earthly realm must give way to the 7th day where God exists. If that's where you want to be, you have a choice. And if not, you are accommodated. That's going to be the theme and the topic. How you was accommodated on the 6th day, and how the advocate made provisions for you to separate yourself, even though you're called back. Next topic.